de garwade agtayagua geesigiya gaygiya dadkuba markuu goomanaa nafta geedka iyo garka ugu xidho waxa ay gashay gobolimaadu tahay u garanaya abalamada de garwade agtayagua geesigiya gaygiya dadkuba markuu goomanaa nafta geedka iyo garka ugu xidho waxa ay gashay gobolimaadu tahay u garanaya لقلدي حرفيبو قمريو كتشعل قويو أدون لبنك هاسريو قروا كتشرا.
Somalia's civil war began here in the north in the mid-80s, in which the people rose up against the military regime of General Siad Barre. It was a vicious conflict in which the government was at war with its own people.
Little about cutting old ties and switching alliances. As long as someone supplied him with weapons, he'd have the power to do whatever he wanted to his people. He ruled from Mogadishu, his capital in the south, favoring his own clan, the Darads. Barry had some Isaks in top positions, including the notorious head of the prison system, but that didn't stop him from trying to crush Isak nationalism in the north. The international media did not show up en masse for the slaughter of the Isaks. Barry's atrocities were largely ignored, but Isak artists captured their plight. All-out civil war eventually erupted in 1988, when a mainly Isak resistance group called the Somali National Movement, the SNM, briefly seized Hargeisa and other towns. Barry ordered Soviet MiG jets and American-built tanks to level the cities. But it wasn't enough to save his regime. In January of last year, Barry fled to Kenya. His bodyguards gunned down and left to rot outside the presidential palace. In the north, the Isaks inherited a dying land. In Hargeisa, once home to 500,000 people, 50,000 were killed.
Maxamed Xasan oo Axmed Dheere ku magac dheer ayaa waxa uu ka mid ahaan jiray duuliyayaashii ciidamadii cirka ee Soomaaliya gaar ahaan waqtigii dagaaladii 88 waqooyiga Soomaaliya. halkaas ayaa isagii diyaaradiisa loo diray si uu magaalada Hargeysa u duqeeyo hase ahaatee intuu dhaafay ayuu diyaaradii wuxuu la galay dalka Jamhuuriyadda Djibouti. bari dhaweed ayuu Hargeysa tagay duuliye Axmed halkaas oo si wanaagsan loogu soo dhaweeyay.
subjected to artillery shelling, to bombing, to house-to-house killings, and even after they fled their homes, they were subjected to strafing and continued artillery shelling.
Rakia Omar was born in Hargeisa, but left as a teenager. As head of the New York-based human rights group Africa Watch, she tried to alert the Western world to Barry's atrocities, a country where justice was a sham.
We documented cases where people were sentenced to life imprisonment simply under a tree. There's no investigation, there's no legal defense. So I wouldn't actually go so far as to call it a trial. It was just some kind of facade that they wanted to go through to show that they were using at least a military form of justice. But it was just pure might, as simple as that.
The might of military courts, police torturers, and massacres carried out by army commanders kept Barry in power for 21 years.
Farhan Warfa was arrested by 2K's men at Kabyle on suspicion of stealing a water tank. He says he was tortured and then shot and left for dead by Colonel 2K himself. The colonel ordered henchmen to dispose of his body. Instead, Warfa survived, and his family managed to bribe his captors to let him go.
Tens of thousands died and hundreds of thousands were displaced until eventually the control of this part of Somalia by Siad Barre's military regime collapsed. And it was at that point that this region declared independence from the rest of Somalia.
meeqaam sare kugu casuunamayda hurtiyo ammaan baanu madaxweyne meeqaam sare kugu casuunamayda madaxda waa la dhiirigeliyaa siday u mutaan xilkooda waxqabadkoodana waa la muujaa markay midhaheeda keenaan مسؤول قروي موسى مخاطي وحنكاي إنه ضلك ملك داري كرو إنه ضلك ملب كدي كرو
Somaliland دلني وايد دمانتول سيداي ودستين الكودي نبض ودلبين الله ودو Somaliland dhalini waayeen dhammaantood siday u dhisteen dhulkoodii nabadda u dhidibeen allow dhow wadaraartii la taagee la dhidbay calankeenii dhallaankeenu nabad ku seeday ودرارتي للتاقي قدد بيعانا كيني دلان كينو نبض كسيحدي وما هدافها وانا قدسها وحيد عيابا لكيس عياها وطني قدبتها العودو وما هدافها وانا قدسها وحيد عيابا كيس عياها وطني قدرتها الدور
horta waa hadal hayn laakiin hadal hayn taaba madaxweynaha Soomaaliya Maxamed Cabdullaahi talaabo umar sabu qaaday markuu yiri talgalin baan laakiin wuxuu ku jeeyay markuu yiri waan imanayaa oo siyaabo ku imanaya la fikiray siyaabo ku imanaya xeerarka caalamiga ah waqtiga dawliga ah aqliga saliimka ah midna ma qaadan karo midka dawladdiisa iyo dadkiisa oo ka madaxda yahay waxa soo dambiya galeen ayaa dadku waxa u geystay waliba oranaya anigoo madaxweynaha gobolada soo diyaarinaya Soomaha waan imanaya macna soo wada soo inta maaha oo taan loo aqbalayna maya
Somaliland Development Organization. and we are collecting from British hospital and schools material in Somaliland.
You are there?
At the university, yes, teaching.
Oh, teaching at the
Yes,
university.
yes.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And you live here in London?
No, in Wales.
You're from Wales. You're Welsh yourself.
Yes.
Ah, right. Great. Yeah.
Somaliland a very good anniversary. Very, very important for Somaliland that you have had a good meeting in London, and let them know in London that you are a proper country. You are the best country in Africa.
Oh,
and that is
yeah.
important.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you for whatever you're doing.
How do you want it? Who you are? What do you want it? How do you want it? Who you are?